Under the NEC, the premise is that the project manager on an interim basis assesses the amount that's due to be paid to a contractor. Under most other forms of contract, the payment mechanism starts with an application from the contractor, which is then reviewed and assessed. Ewan, do you think that works better with the project manager taking a really proactive role in doing that primary assessment, or does that not actually happen in practice?
Well, there's a possibility that that process that the project manager can simply assess what's due under, say, an activity schedule option A contract, because it's a simple mechanism of reaching a milestone before payment is released. It can work okay there, but what concerns me is the contractor is in possession of the records and evidence of the costs he's incurred. He's the party that has the most knowledge of what he has incurred, and therefore he can put together the records and justify the sums incurred and apply for that in payment. And the contractor, even if he doesn't have the responsibility of making the application for payment, would be unwise not to submit an application for payment, because unless you submit that detail to the project manager, I think he's more likely to err on the side of caution from the employer's perspective and give a lower valuation of what sums might be due to the contractor, unless those figures are justified. So it's always going to be sensible and prudent for a contractor to still submit an application for payment.
So given that it's quite a big jump, John, from other forms of contract, why does the NEC take this approach of, in the contract at least, saying that it should be the project manager doing the primary assessment role?
The answer is I don't know. And in reality, it is exactly as Ewan says. I know of no contract, main contract, where it is the contractor doesn't submit an application. At subcontract level, it can be a bit different, and effectively the contractor performs the project manager's role of taking the lead on it. But at any principal large subcontractor with a commercial department, that happens. It's more the trade contractors who are sort of too busy delivering work, who the contractor says, this is what you're getting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, isn't, Ian, sort of going back maybe 15, 20 years in the industry, isn't this approach by the NEC a ramping up of the old PQS role of, I'm going to go out down on site, I'm going to measure, I'm going to tell you how much work you've done, and you're just going to like it and get on with it? I mean, isn't that now reflected, and it's almost a retrograde step backwards in the industry?
Well, I think in fairness, it's more about looking to the ethos of the contract in terms of partnering, collaboration, and the idea the project manager who's making this assessment should be very close to the workface, should know what's going on, should have accepted programs, should be able to make a determination of where the works are. And in fairness, the contract allows for the contractor to submit an application, and if they do submit one, the project manager must take account of it. So there's nothing stopping the contractor from doing that. So, there's no reason why you can't have the normal application and then assessment process. But if the contractor fails to do it, the project manager is still obligated on the contractor's behalf to make an assessment for them. That's probably a positive in one sense. It protects them and makes sure they will get regular payments.
So picking up on that positive aspect, and really trying to look at it from a contractor's point of view, would you see that as a positive, that no matter what I do as a contractor, someone somewhere out there is going to make an assessment, has an obligation to make an assessment to allow me to be paid?
I think it is a little bit of a positive in that there is a process. The process doesn't stop just because I don't submit an application and my QS has gone ill, and for whatever reason, or I've gone on holiday and I can't submit it this month. There is an obligation on the employer's behalf to make that. So the process doesn't stop. So that's a mild positive. But as I say, in reality, pretty much all contractors I know always submit an application.
Do you think, looking at that reality, which I think is shared amongst all of us, that contractors do still make the application, do you think that's really what the NEC had in mind, though? Or is it more sort of this shift towards the collaboration that Ian's talked about, and the project manager being much more closely linked to site? And actually what's happened is we as an industry have imported all our old ways and old ideas from other forms of contract and haven't sort of taken on board and lived this part of the NEC, where perhaps other areas we have. Ewan, do you think that's fair?
Well, I can't say that I know what the NEC drafts people were intending behind this clause. But I just think it would be commercially naive not to submit these records. Main contractors are in contracting for a reason, to make money. They justify their costs, and if they're not doing that, then they're less likely to be profitable. And therefore, they're always going to continue to submit applications for payment, not just because of the historical reasons, but because that's how you do business efficiently and effectively.
Is it possible that actually this is another area where the NEC sets out the formal process which happens at the end of a series of communication, and actually the intention is that sitting behind that, before the project manager makes his assessment, there's an anticipation that there's going to be a lot of discussion, ending in a formal process of assessment by the project manager?
I think that might well be the case. And just picking up on the general point, I know that in the guidance notes, the original guidance notes years ago, which I read like crazy before I actually started doing research, they were very clear that the project manager should be a hands-on project manager and not remote from the project. And if you take that logic further, then you say, well, okay, they're hands-on, they're involved, they're discussing. The obvious thing is, well, we've actually discussed it, and what comes out, or what formally comes out, contractually comes out, is actually already agreed.
So summarising that conversation then, I think the reality is the practice on site in the UK is not reflected by the way the contract is drafted. Contractors do make applications, and the project manager reviews, as he's compelled to do, reviews those applications and makes his determination. Whatever the contract might say or might anticipate, we continue to do payment applications in the same way that we always have done under other forms of contract. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.